The Agenda's election coverage. This week, it looked at the four parties' plans for improving Ontario's transportation infrastructure, examined what a critical letter from NDP stalwarts means to the party, and looked at the many levels in which civic-minded folks can engage in politics. The Agenda's Week in Review begins with Pia Chattopadhyay and a look at the issues resonating most with Northern voters.
Sébastien Goyer, I know you're in a car, and I hope you can hear me. In the last election, the Ring of Fire was front and centre as a critical issue for Northern Ontario. How do you believe your party, the Liberals, have helped move that project forward?
Well, we had to deal with the Aboriginals and the First Nations over there, and we did. We now have an agreement signed with the Mattawas First Nation, so that's a good stepping stone. From there, we'll be able to move on now, as the Premier said yesterday in Sudbury. The agreement is done. She's committed that within the 60 days of her taking the office, the Economic Development Corporation will be established, and we'll be moving on the Ring of Fire. Our financing we've already committed our $1 billion to the Ring of Fire. We want the federal to government to come in. However, if they don't come in, we're still committing our $1 billion, and we're going forward.
Okay, Peter Politis, that change in the Liberals. In the budget that was defeated, they said the $1 billion that they would put in would be contingent on matching federal funds in their party platform. They now say that they'll go without the federal government. What do you think of the provincial government's approach to the Ring of Fire recently?
Well, quite frankly, where was the $1 billion, 5 years ago when it was needed to get the project going? And it wasn't even $1 billion that was committed just before the election. Now, during an election, it's $1 billion that's committed. I mean, this is what we have to get past in Northern Ontario. The dilly-dallying around that's taking place around one of the most significant discoveries in our history. A discovery that's similar to putting up the Kirkland Lake and the Cobalt and the Timmins communities and the prospects that were found around that. A significant part of an economic recovery in a province that needs that economic recovery. I can tell you as a mayor, I've been dealing with this for quite a while now. The dilly-dallying around, decisions being made behind closed doors, coming out, finding out because you never spoke to enough people and got enough people involved that those decisions don't work, and then spending a couple of years trying to backtrack and get through those. We need to start working through public and private partnerships. We need to get the people involved around the Ring of Fire who know the Ring of Fire. We need to stop blaming the First Nation community for the delay in the Liberal platform to getting to the point where they needed to start developing the Ring of Fire. First Nations issues are there, they're real issues, they need to be addressed and dealt with, and they're part of the process. There's no plan to get the Ring of Fire done. Again, it's just day-by-day knee-jerk reactions that are taking place. And we need to get back to those public and private partnerships, get the federal government involved, and get all the smart people in Northern Ontario who know the Ring of Fire involved so we can move that forward. It's gone from having about 500 employees in the exploration phase down to about 12 today. That's perspective, and that's not the type of perspective we need in Northern Ontario. We need to move past that.
Okay, I want to give Sébastien a chance to respond to that. He's your rival in that riding, and I'm sure has something to say about what you've just said. Sébastien, go ahead.
I heard what Mr. Politis was saying. The problem is the Conservative have nice words, but when it's time to taking actions, their record in the North is not, they speak by their action. When their leader was the ministry of that department, Ministry of Development and Mines, he closed all the offices in the North, shipped them to Toronto. So it's nice to have nice words. Actions speak louder, and actually we're moving ahead. So we've committed some funding. We're standing up to the federal government, who seems to prioritize the oil sands out in Alberta than prioritize Ontario. But maybe Mr. Politis, if he can talk to his friends at the Conservative level in Ottawa, maybe he can make them understand. Problem is we're moving forward, and that's what it is.
Okay. I'm going to come to you, Rob Ferguson, in a minute, but I just want to point out to our audience that Sébastien is not driving his car. He's in the passenger seat. So we're good on the safety issue, just in case anyone was worried about that. Rob Ferguson, when we say Northern Ontario, we talk about Ring of Fire, but give us a bit of a reality check. In the best case scenario, no matter who's elected, how soon could someone start getting chromite and other resources out of the ground in the Ring of Fire?
It's going to take years. And if we had $1 for every time a politician said Ring of Fire and touted Ring of Fire, we'd have the $1 billion. We'd have $2 billion, right? So, the Liberals have been criticized for being late to this party, that, they did come forward with the $1 billion, but nothing's going to happen there until there are roads or rail lines, whatever, built in there to get the stuff out. The other thing is, you know, the major investor in the Ring of Fire, Cliffs Natural Resources, based in Cleveland, has been slowly pulling out. So last week they decided that they'd sell their camp to Noront Mines, and you know, so that's them further pulling out. And you know, it's not being read well that this bodes well, obviously.
So no
and they're
matter
the biggest single investor in the whole shooting match.
Okay, so the promise that we'll get resources out of the ground of this, that it will create jobs, it's a bit of a myth, is what you're saying, in the immediate future,
I mean,
no matter who gets elected.
Yeah, Dalton McGuinty, when he was premier, was talking about this for years. And, you know, I personally had, you know, I used to be a business reporter and I didn't really cover mining, but, you know, someone in my position, you hear about that kind of thing. And until Dalton started speaking about it, it wasn't really on the radar, I don't think, in the public mind. Maybe, you know, in certain circles it was. So, you know, it's been talked about lots. And, you know, when all is said than done, there's a lot more said than done.
Okay. Celia, the Soo, of course, isn't in the Ring of Fire. How connected to this debate over the Ring of Fire are voters in your riding?
Voters in our riding need jobs. They need reduced hydro rates. They need and are asking for education. All these are elements that build up capacity for the Ring of Fire development. We're talking a long-term project. We're talking a lot of development work that needs to be done as we figure out where the roads go or the rail goes, as we figure out how we work with the companies and how we bring companies in. We need to be addressing issues such as hydro, the cost of hydro. These are enterprises that will need energy. We need to figure out how to get good priced, affordable energy into the businesses that will be in the Ring of Fire. We need to also figure out, for instance, how to involve the people of our region. It's fine to talk about the Ring of Fire will bring lots of jobs to First Nations communities. We have to make sure that First Nations youth in the far north are getting the education and training opportunities now so that they will be ready when actually mining operations commence. So I think there's a lot of build-up that can start immediately. The NDP are in support of this project. We see the immense benefits that it can have for the people of Ontario and the people of the region, but it needs to be proceeded with a lot of planning and carefully. This, for instance, is muskeg land. It's difficult to build infrastructure in muskeg land. We need to protect the environment. We need to include the peoples of the region. And for all this, we need some preparation time. We need to get going right now on those preparations.
Okay, Celia mentioned roads there. I want to talk about that because it's another big issue in the north. I want to ask each one of you to tell me a little bit of a story. Let me start with Casey here in the studio. You get around Sudbury on your bike, I understand, right?
I do.
Okay, how bad or how good are the roads for someone like you trying to get around in Sudbury, whether you're on your bike or in a car?
Well, for all the drivers in Sudbury, when you hit a pothole in your car, just imagine your tires are this big, how much more it hurts. So the roads are terrible in Sudbury. We can all agree on that when you're from Sudbury. We have no cycling infrastructure. I routinely get yelled at to get on the sidewalk, which is very dangerous to pedestrians and cyclists. So it's a big issue, transportation. Really what it comes down to is we're a resource-based community. We have a lot of mining in Sudbury. It's a mining town. We have really heavy trucks with ore on them coming out of the city every day. That puts a lot of stress on our roads. And if we don't build high-quality roads from the beginning and then invest in cycling infrastructure and as well collect a fair share of tax revenue from these resource companies, we're stuck subsidizing these roads. And not just that, but we're finding that we have to redo them every few years. I mean, they just redid Falconbridge Highway a few years ago and it's already falling apart.
Cherise, is it possible to do all of the build that's on the books right now without new dedicated transportation revenue streams?
No, I don't think so. I think we can get started, and I think that we're seeing a lot of platforms dedicate money into a fund that goes to transit and dedicate that money for like 10 years of building, and that's great because that gets us started. But I do think we're going to have to introduce some revenue tools going forward, and I do think that we need to look at really challenging revenue tools like road pricing, and those are things like tolls, congestion charges, parking fees, and the only party that is currently talking about that is the Green Party. And that's because those types of tools serve two functions. They raise money, but they also help with that encouraging behavior change. So moving people from their cars onto transit. And I know that that's not very popular. That's probably the least popular kind of revenue tools. But even right-wing think tanks, including C.D. Howe Institute, the Manning Foundation, are warning that unless we start charging more for driving, we're not going to see the significant reduction in congestion that we need.
Paying $2 a day parking surcharge or a variety of other measures is really small change in relation to the amount of what you're going to gain. In fact, Cherise Berta's organization that you had Cherise in earlier,
Pembina Institute.
the Pembina Institute released a report a little while ago that said that when the big move is finally operational in about 10 years, drivers themselves are going to save $2,000 because of time saved and in less gas expenses.
But that's then. The immediate.
I think that's what leadership is all about, is that you have to get before people and put the choices there. And that's what we're doing in this election, is saying, look, we've got a choice. We can either accept and continue to tolerate the worst gridlock in the world, or in fact, we're going to actually do something about it. And I think there's lots of polls out there that show that at least 50% of drivers are willing to pay these kinds of fees if there's a discernible benefit to congestion.
Hang on, Glenn Marie, because I got a quote I got to come to you with. Okay. Last June, interview with Spacing Magazine to John Lawrence, whom you know has been on this program many times, good guy. You had this to say about funding transit. We will need a new revenue tool, whether it's congestion charges or payroll tax or sales tax or gas taxes. Every single urban region that has tried to build a project on the scale we're trying to do has had to introduce a revenue tool. Have you changed your mind on that?
No, and we have. I mean, and as I said, come knock on doors with me. There are new income taxes for higher net worth individuals.
That's not a new revenue tool. That's an existing revenue tool.
Well, it's an increase in revenue. You need new revenue, and there's also 2 gas taxes. And the other thing we've done, which is something we got back to value planning, Regional Express Rail is in effect a value planning exercise, because when you go to smart train controls and you run these vehicles like subways, like that, which you can't do with diesels, you totally change the economics of that. So the subsidy basically evaporates on the Lakeshore Line.
I don't mind when politicians change their mind. I really don't. If you've changed your mind, though, I just want to know.
No, and I think that statement is true. And I think at one point in the future, 10 years out, we're going to have to start looking at something that is more substantial if you want to look at that far in the future.
But the political reality of today is it's too tough?
In the next 10 years, and it was what Cherise said, you got to build this stuff. I've always said there's the world after the Eglinton line opens and people can actually see what an LRT is, that it actually runs underground, it doesn't run in traffic, it's not what Rob Ford said it is.
Not a glorified streetcar.
It's actually pretty spectacular. And we can build all this stuff for the next 10 years and do that. And then let's see what the state of our economy is, because right now, when we do the East Bayfront LRT out to that's going to trigger 15 million square feet of office space to go to that. That's not small potatoes.
Okay,
that's hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue.
I got another quote here. And if you've got kids watching, you may just want to take them away from the TV set here for a second, because in order to accurately convey this quote, I'm going to have to use some profanity. But that's what's in the quote. Here's Joseph Heath, professor of philosophy at the U of T, who wrote this, last April. Tim Hudak has promised that it's possible to build new subways without raising taxes, but by eliminating government waste. Andrea Horvath has promised that the NDP would build new subways without raising taxes on ordinary, hardworking people, but by taxing corporations. Waste and corporate taxes are basically magic hats that politicians can pull anything they like out of. Whenever a conservative says that a project will be paid for by eliminating waste and creating, quote, efficiencies, what that says to the median voter is, you won't have to pay for it. And whenever the NDP says that a project will be paid for by increasing corporate taxes, or better yet, closing corporate tax loopholes, this is also just code for you won't have to pay for it. All of it, the professor says, is bullshit, in the sense that anyone paying attention knows that you will have to pay for it, otherwise you won't get it. It's just a line that politicians can use in order to avoid explicitly stating the fact. Responses, please. Over here.
This
Rosario.
is why we need to make the priority of balancing the budget, to lower corporate taxes, to attract investment back to Ontario that's going to create jobs, to reduce the size of government so that we're actually living within our means and pay down our debt. And if you look at the Ontario Transportation Trust that Tim Hudak and the Ontario PCs are going to do, it's going to be $2 billion of prioritizing. That's leadership is making a choice. So we are going to choose to make the decision to put $2 billion every single year into the Ontario Transportation Trust. Ontario has a spending problem, not a revenue problem. We need politicians at Queen's Park who are going to make choices.
That $2 billion in the trust comes from where?
That's going to come out of the pre-existing $12 billion provincial capital infrastructure budget. Additional funding will come from selling off additional assets so that we can invest that money back into transit. We're going to have increased commercialization of GO stations. Let's imagine where you can go and drop off your dry cleaning, pick up breakfast, and hop on the train instead of having to stop 3 times on the way to the GO station. By leasing off that space to entrepreneurs to run businesses there, that's going to, again, bring more revenue to the system that gets invested back into the system.
I need to get Rosario Marchese to respond to this as well, because the claim here that you can build new subways with a simple corporate tax increase but not taxing ordinary hardworking people, he says is not on.
Well, I disagree with Mr. Heath. Obviously, I think we need to bring back some trust from the public. If we don't have a bit of trust from the public, we won't be able to do a thing. And so what we're doing is shifting some of the responsibility through a progressive tax on corporations. And I think when we do that, people are going to say, okay, it's about time they contribute some money. It's an important beginning. And that's part of how we bring back trust. And talking about the Financial Accountability Office is an important part of this debate. For us, having that office look at all the public-private partnerships that the other two parties have a total commitment to. In fact, we're building more projects through that means than ever in our history. And we believe that having such an office would reveal, indeed, how much we're spending through that process versus public procurement, which would be a lot more cheaper for us to be able to do. And so having that office would reveal the level of mismanagement and waste in the system. So we look forward to that.
When I read this quote, Tim, you were the only guy who went here, here. Why did you say here, here?
Well, I said that. I mean, again, we welcome an adult conversation about how to fund transit, and I think the best way to establish the better way to establish the trust that Rosario just referred to is to say to drivers, if you have if the revenue tools of $2 a day parking surcharges, high occupancy lane surcharges, and so forth, are all dedicated to improving transit that's going to take lots of drivers off the roads and provide a commensurate benefits for those who are paying those fees, they're going to, I firmly believe that the majority of Ontarians, if not immediately, are very soon going to be in strong support of them.
Let's talk about this letter that was written by more than 30, I guess we'd call them longtime stalwart New Democrats who had been, decades and decades in the party, who wrote a letter to Andrea Horwath. This is the Kaplan one. So we know about that letter. Jerry Kaplan, who's also a longtime New Democrat, wrote another piece for the Globe and Mail's website in which he said basically many of the same things that were in this letter. And let's do an excerpt from that. Jerry writes, "Dear Andrea, your election campaign has frankly been a mess. No coherent theme, no memorable policies, nothing to deal with the great concerns of New Democrats everywhere. Increasing inequality, the precarious lives of so many working people, reduced public services, global warming. I'm afraid you offer little sense that you understand Ontario's needs and that if elected, you have any serious plan to meet them. In fact, you've quite deliberately gone the other way. You offer mere tokens to those whose need is greatest, while your real target seems to be business people large and small. Yes, they have their needs too, some of them legitimate. But they also have their parties who cater to those needs. If business wants a sympathetic party to support, and they do, you can be sure they don't need and won't buy the NDP." Jerry Kaplan in the Globe and Mail website, on the Globe and Mail website, essentially echoing what was in that letter from 30 prominent, eminent, whatever you want to call them, stalwarts from the NDP. Okay, Marit.
Well,
fire away.
I don't think the NDP should be taking strategic campaign advice from Jerry Kaplan. Jerry has, I can only remember one election in recent memory, well, the 20 years that I've been involved with the NDP, where Jerry didn't come out in an election and try to, criticize the approach the party was taking.
But in fairness, it's more than just him.
Well, okay.
And he represents a particular view of where he believes the NDP should be.
Starting with Jerry, I would say that Jerry I worked for Jerry in the war room of a campaign under Howard Hampton, and I can assure you there were things that were decided at that point that probably, again, I just wouldn't be taking strategic campaign advice at this moment from him. However, I think there's some. look, I mean, our party, in terms of the third letter of the 34, some of the folks on that letter, like Judy Rebick, I think has always been a loud, critic of the NDP. I don't see her at any NDP events ever, or,
Kathy Crow?
No, but I was going to say,
Kathy Crow's a
people
former
like
candidate.
Kathy Crow,
and
who
she's
is
a homelessness advocate.
who is
from
supporting
way back.
MPP Sherry DeNovo in her election. Many of the names on there are actually actively supporting their local MPPs in their campaigns. But in any case, look, I mean, we're a party of debate. We've had these conversations. I disagree, as I think Andrea Horwath does, that there's anything inherently not progressive or social democratic about inefficiencies in government or finding affordability issues.
No, but let's hit it on the head. The suggestion is in Kaplan's piece on the Globe website and in the letter by the 34 that the party's lost its way.
Yeah.
That's the allegation.
I really think if you look, and I have to say that the letter of the 34, it struck me that it came out right the day after the platform was released, and I thought, I don't think they've actually looked at the platform. I mean, I think that if you look at the platform, it's really not all that different than what we've put forward in past elections. It's also not very different from what Jack Layton brought forward in the last federal election. We are a party that is modernizing social democracy. I think that's fair to say. I think that we're talking about issues that matter to real Ontarians, real issues, and these are real problems that they have.
Let's get into this. Michael?
You know, this reminds me of, and it may even remind you of it, it's the waffle movement all over again. It's the New Politics Initiative. This is the last gasp of the old guard NDP. Michelle Landsberg, Judy Rebick, Jerry Kaplan, names that have been associated with the NDP in a negative way sometimes as well, for many, many years. And this is sort of their last fight. This is what I was talking about earlier. The NDP is trying to sort of reinvent the wheel and trying to modernize the party, which I think is the right thing to do. These individuals are not really representative of the NDP today. So this is their last gasp. I get what they're doing, I understand what they're doing, and certainly as a media story, it lasts for a few days. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think Andrea Horwath and her senior fellows are really going to care.
I do just want to differ with you on one point, because I know there have been lots of New Democrats who've come out and said, that these are not, today's New Democrats. And I don't know that that's entirely fair, right? Like, there are people on that list that I know, and I don't know all of them, I probably know maybe 5 or 6 of them, who I think are, as I said, some of them are often critics of the party. But I do think, we have room for that kind of discussion debate. The problem I have with that letter is that it was timed to come out during an election campaign, and I think that's unfortunate. And I think that there are probably many of those people.
Out, though?
What?
When else would it have come out?
Well,
I mean,
think
this is
that's
the party's
kind of conversation.
move.
I'll give you an example. I'm a Toronto Riding Association president. I went to the NDP Provincial Council a couple months prior to the election being called, and I was there with another Toronto Riding Association president, Janet Sahlberg, who is a very prominent New Democrat. We went there.
Stephen Lewis's sister,
she is.
David Lewis's daughter.
We went there along with other riding association presidents. One of the things we wanted to do was have an opportunity to speak about the need for a strong platform on supporting transit, building, investing in transit, and Toronto issues. And we went to the council meeting, and we had a very fair conversation there. And you know what? Weeks later, a terrific Toronto platform was released. So I think that actually there is room in this party for conversation.
Okay. David, what's your view on
this?
this?
It's unfortunate they didn't take that approach.
Within all parties, there's lots of different views, whether it's Conservatives, Greens, Liberals, or New Democrats. What's unusual is twofold. One, for it to come out in the timing in the middle of a campaign. Usually, everyone's trying to rally around and support whatever the campaign, even if they have misgivings. And the other, which I found really striking, was the reaction to it, where you have the campaign co-chair, and the people on that list, I don't know all of them, I know some of them. I don't doubt the sincerity that any of them have, but essentially, said they're not even New Democrats. They're some of them are pseudo-liberals or some. I thought that in that kind of dismissive tone was.
They didn't say they were all New Democrats. They said they were supporters.
But it was.
I think in fairness,
Gilles Bisson, the campaign chair.
They're socialists more than they are lifelong New Democrats.
I think some people might. Anyways, how are they?
I'm not using that as a bad word. I'm just saying that.
But I think that dismissive tone really struck me and was very unlike what you've seen with New Democrats, where they have tended during election periods to have pulled together, rallied behind their leader or behind their platform or ideas, which I just find that very striking. I do think that this is very much an older guard versus someone who wants to tack the New Democrats more to the center, whether that's like a Tony Blair or a Roy Romano or a Jack Layton, fair enough. But I would say this, that I don't think Andrea has established her credibility the way a lot of those others had over the years. And I think that's why their campaign is in a bit of a stall mode.
John
It's
Michael.
worth saying that, I mean, all three parties have shifted in the last few years. The Liberals have come very far to the left from where Dalton McGuinty and Dwight Duncan had them. And even Tim Hudak, he spent most of last year talking about bringing in right-to-work legislation in Ontario, and then backed away from that when it was seen to be, politically damaging. If the NDP look like they've taken a real tack to the centre or even a tack to the right, as some of those letter writers have said, it is at least in part because the Liberals have moved to the left. And we have this political idea that the NDP, their natural position is always 5 degrees to the left of the Liberals.
Exactly.
Knowing you were coming today, I got some emails from some people who said, and this isn't a surprise when you're dealing with 70,000 people, they don't feel up to scratch. They don't feel like they're ready to go. They're people who are involved in the process, will be working for Elections Ontario on Election Day, and they don't feel they're trained and ready to go. Is that unusual?
I don't think it's unusual. I think the challenge that we've had is, over time, I was recently speaking at an event where I went back and I looked at our training programs. In 1950, when we would train electoral workers to work, our training program was 20 minutes. Now, our training program is 2.5 hours. Because of, over time, legislators have added a whole number of provisions to deal with a whack of individuals who face barriers to voting, but it's made the process a little bit more complex. Certainly, there's also the challenge of the fact that we have overlapping jurisdictions between municipal elections, federal elections, and provincial elections, and all of those rules aren't completely harmonized. So therefore, there's some idiosyncrasy, some differences.
Confusion.
A little bit of confusion. Yeah. But our job is really to ensure that those Election Day workers, they understand the rules, they understand exactly where they can get the relevant information that they need to be able to process the 9.2 million electors in accordance with our laws here in Ontario.
9.2 million electors who can vote. Okay, we know they don't all vote, and that's my next thing here. This is going to depress the hell out of you, but we're going to do this anyway. Well, these are your numbers from after the 2007 election. 97% of voters and 90% of non-voters said they specifically recalled seeing, reading, or hearing non-political election advertising or information through at least one of the 6 main vehicles used by Elections Ontario. And there they are, TV, radio, and so on. The vast majority of voters, that's 99%, and non-voters, 91% alike, continue to share a fundamental belief that it is important that people vote. And yet, you know what I'm going to show you next. Let's bring up this next set of numbers where we go back to the middle 1970s when everybody was very civically minded. We had nearly 70% turnout, but then go to the 2007 election when there actually was a really important issue at stake and only about half the people voted. And then 2011 where less than half the people voted. Okay, people have the information they need. Your own numbers say it. People think it's important to vote. Their numbers say it, but they don't. Explain this disconnect.
This is a difficult question. And every electoral administrator across the country is facing similar type of declining voter turnout rates. There has been a great deal of academia study on this, and there's a number of theories. I don't think it's one individual theory, but there are theories that have been purported that the further we get away from the last Second World War, where everyone knew somebody that had sacrificed, had made a terrific sacrifice to ensure that our democracy here in Canada is sustained. If you look at the voting turnout trends, those were when we voted the highest in Canada. Our society has changed dramatically over time. When you and I were kids, we probably ate dinner most times together with our parents, without a TV in the room, very frequently talking about politics with family and family members like that. Societal changes we're seeing as well, where the families don't eat dinner and talk about politics. We don't see the same volunteerism in our communities. Our churches are suffering. Our community association groups are seeing a declining volunteers turnout. That coupled with even enumeration. Back in the day when we used to enumerate people on the list, there would be people who, for a variety of reasons, didn't want to be enumerated. Now we've moved to a permanent register, and I would suggest that our numbers are far more accurate. But thus, we're still seeing a great deal of people who aren't coming to turn out.
Well, because you're a public servant, you're too nice to say that negative political ads are turning people off and that politicians are doing too much. I don't like using the word lying, so let's just say, playing with the truth a little bit during the campaigns. Do you think, in your judgment, that turns people off politics?
I think that the actual turnout is really a shared responsibility. You know, my job as Chief Electoral Officer, our job at Elections Ontario is to ensure every Ontarian knows where to vote, when to vote, how to vote, and what they need to do to vote. It's certainly shared, though, with the political parties, with the party leaders, the parties themselves. They set the platforms, they set the policy issues that they want to campaign on, how they wish to be governed. The local candidates, they provide perspectives on local issues. It's shared with media members, such as yourself and the other media members who follow the politics, follow the comings and goings of the party leaders, provide opinion, provide editorials, op-ed pieces, etc. And the ultimate fourth equation to the puzzle is the elector. The elector themselves need to inform themselves on which particular political party, which particular candidate best represents their views and how they wish to see our great province governed.
Having problems deciding how to vote or perhaps even whether to vote in this provincial election? Do you vote the party, the leader, the riding candidate, specific issues? If you vote habitually for the same party, then the dilemma of making a political choice might be unfamiliar to you. If, however, you're undecided or unimpressed, this next discussion is for you. Let's welcome Valerie Schatzker. She's a musician and writer. Paul Burling, retired auto worker and blogger. Ian Williams, poet and professor of English at Sheridan College. And Rashi Kilnani, freelance journalist and communications consultant. And it's great to have all four of you around our table here at TVO tonight. Valerie, to you first. How engaged are you in this election campaign so far?
Very.
You're very engaged?
Yes.
Okay. What riding do you live in?
Toronto Centre.
Toronto Centre, so sort of downtown part of the city.
Yes.
Do you always vote?
Always.
You never miss a chance to vote?
I was taught when I was in public school that was a gift, and I had to exercise my franchise every time.
Do you know who you're going to vote for?
No.
So you're
quite.
still undecided?
Not quite.
You've ruled some out, but you're still...
Yes.
I think, okay, we'll see what that means in a little bit. Okay, let's go over here. Rashi.
Yes.
How engaged are you in this campaign so far?
I'm watching carefully.
Okay, what does that mean?
Meaning I'm new to Toronto. I've only been here about 4 months. So this is very different from where I was last, which is India and then, of course, Quebec. Both places that have had very exciting elections recently. So I'm watching, I'm observing, I'm learning a little bit more about the electoral process here in Ontario, a little bit more about the issues here that are in many ways different than the issues that I faced as a Quebecoise when I lived in Quebec.
You've never lived in Ontario before?
I lived in Ontario as a high school student
So it's been
when
a
I
long
first
time.
came to Canada. And then I kind of had a year in between there and a year in between here. But in Canada, I've largely lived in Quebec. Quebec has been home.
Okay. What riding do you live in?
Toronto Centre.
Also Toronto Centre, okay. Do you always vote?
I don't, I'm embarrassed to say. I always follow politics. And I don't know, as a journalist, sometimes I feel that maybe I shouldn't vote. Maybe that'll make me seem less credible. So I kind of have mixed feelings about voting, but I love politics. So I love to watch.
So it's good that we've got you here for this. All right, let's go. Ian, how engaged are you in the campaign so far?
I'm sort of watching.
Sort of watching?
Sort of watching, but watching from like the gym wall, right? The dance happening in the middle, right? So I'm not quite sure what's going to happen, and hoping to sort of stay lurking in the shadows there while watching. So not terribly engaged, but observing sort of what hits me, but not actively going out to find information.
Where do you live?
I live in Brampton. Brampton West would be my riding.
Brampton West is your riding. Do you always vote?
Not religiously, but historically, yeah. I make an effort to go out there to the public school and cast a ballot, yeah.
Okay, very good. Let's go to Paul. How engaged are you so far?
Being a political blogger, I'm very engaged.
You're very engaged.
I follow
okay.
everything every day that's going on, tweets, Twitter, newspapers, news media, whatever I can find.
Why?
I just find it's incredibly interesting. I find the backroom dealings I find are more interesting than the stuff that's actually out in the media, some of the stuff you deal with.
Okay, what riding do you live in?
I'm in the riding of Ajax.
Well, there is no riding of Ajax.
Ajax Pickering.
Ajax Pickering,
Right.
okay. And do you always vote?
I always vote.
You've never missed one?
Never missed one.
Good
I don't
for
think
you.
there's any excuse to miss one. With the advanced polls, special polls, everybody should be able to make it.
They make it easy enough to vote that everybody
I think they
should
do.
vote.
I think, and everybody should, regardless of which party you vote for, whether it's one I support or not, I still think everybody should vote.
And that is the Agenda's Week in Review. You can see all of those programs in their entirety if you want to. They're on our website, theagenda.tvo.org, on our iTunes channel, and on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/theagenda.
Support Ontario's public television. Donate at tvo.org.